today, and the way I've always started teen classes, and it's something we get to wait for the kids to come in, but it's something we always do. I think Michael Mackey's done it. I think a few, but they call it gems, or they call it, what good has happened in your week, and we'll go around. It's a much smaller class, so we're not going to go around to everybody in this class and ask you to think of something good that's happened in your week and share it with us. Because what we do in that period of time is we like to kind of celebrate. There's not a lot of times in life that you get to tell people what good happened, and everyone kind of celebrate in that moment. But what we're going to do right now, what I'm going to tell you or ask you to do, is think of something this week. Think of something this week that was good. Something, it doesn't have to be big, and that's what I tell the kids. It doesn't have to be big. It's just got to be some small victory. Something small that happened in your week that was good. And as you think of that thing, think of why that felt good. What was it? Because sometimes we ignore those things in life. Those things pass us by, and we'll focus and we'll dwell on the bad things. The things that hit us. And we'll focus on those, and we think, man, that took up my whole week. That took up every little brain power. But if we can take a minute and think of that one good thing that happened during the week. And what I'll encourage you to do is we're not going to ask you to share it in here. I told Jenny that maybe I will have everyone share it, because then it would take up the amount of time I had to teach in class. But we're not going to do that. We're going to just think about it, and I'm going to encourage you to share it with somebody. Tell somebody. People like to hear good things. I think sometimes we assume that we don't. And as this past week kind of tells us, there's times that we've got to slow down. There's times that bigger things happen in our lives that kind of make us. Sometimes we need that. I remember in COVID, the years back, the one good thing that came of it was we slowed down. We got time as a family to go out in the backyard. Since COVID, I can probably count on my hand the amount of times we've just gone and played in the backyard. Because we're busy. Everyone's busy. They go off to school, they go off here. But as the hurricane came through, it took a moment to slow down, and it took a moment of fear. And as we think, and it works into my lesson today. What we're going to talk about with the miracles of Jesus, and we're going to talk about when he calmed the storm, and how they looked on those things. And it's in Mark chapter 4. That's where we're going to go. Mark chapter 4, verse 35 through 41. And it's the story of when he's with his disciples teaching. And he's been teaching for a little bit, and then he needs to go across the sea. He says, hey, he's been teaching in a boat, and he's got the people on the shore. And we'll go ahead and read this, and I need a bigger print Bible. And on that day, when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with him in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose. And the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep with a cushion. And they woke him, and they said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he woke, and he rebuked the wind. And he said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear, and said to one another, Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? And it's such an interesting time. Really, it kind of changed my focus on this lesson with what happened. With the two storms that have come through, and what happens with fear. And there's different takes on the news and what they do to get us ready for the storm. Some people would say they panic us. Some people say it's just information. It's what we need to watch. Now, I will admit, I'm glued to the storm. I'm glued to the news. I want to see, is Milton going 2 miles to the north? Is Milton going 2 miles to the right? Because if he goes 2 miles, a little further south, then the water's not going to come up as high in my yard. And, nope, it tilted this way, and I focus on every little thing that I have zero control over. I had zero control over what Milton was going to do. But I focused so much attention, so much time and on that. And you think of when we watch the waves, and you think of the storms that these guys went through. And the Sea of Galilee, when you think of it, is 600 feet below sea level. It's down in the mountains, and the winds come through, and storms can whip up very quickly. Real fast, a storm can come up and change from a smooth sailing sea, especially in a small boat, to waves that are fearing for your life. And what the disciples saw was just a fear for their lives. The boat was no longer to them safe. And you think of the boat, what we're in, and you think of the safety of the boat. That was all they were concerned with, is the safety of the boat. This boat that we were in, that we felt safe in 2 seconds ago, is now unsafe. No matter who was riding in the boat, that boat to them was unsafe. And I can't make it. I don't know if any of y'all have been in a small boat in rough seas. It's scary. It's unsettling. Even if it's not scary, it makes you sick. I remember on our honeymoon, they advertise a catamaran trip that is a sunset. You sail the beautiful seas in a catamaran, and it's just so romantic. And you'll be out there with your new bride, and you'll just, the smooth sailing, and it was beautiful. The weather was beautiful. And we got in this boat, and you sailed out through I don't know, I guess there's a reef that keeps the seas calm. And we go out, and we're sailing slowly. And this is, I think, and Jenny can correct me, and if I'm wrong, she'll get the details, but I'm going to embellish. But I think we were out there for 6 hours. I don't know. But it was a long time. And as you break the reef, you see the waves. I'm thinking, that's where we're going? And these waves, 30 feet. 30 feet. If they were 2 feet, they were 30 feet high. And we go up, and we go down. And we go up, and we go down. I'm thinking, this is the next 6 hours of my life. 2 hours in, it was every man for himself. We were newly married, but Jenny had to take care of herself because I had to focus on me and not throwing up in front of my new bride. And as we go and the trip learns, I'm thinking, I don't know how you survive. I don't know how people, I don't know if y'all watch The Deadliest Catch, and those people get out there and work in these conditions in icy cold. This wasn't that bad, but it was scary. I'm not a boater. I'm not a guy that gets out on the seas and is comfortable. He's not here, but Tom Lucas took me fishing. Tom Lucas is an experienced guy out on a boat and fishing, and he had this boat, and we're probably, 600 feet off the shore of St. Augustine Beach, and he stands up on the tip of his boat, and he fishes. And, it's waves, and you're gently rocking. So he says, Jeff, come up here. This is where the fish are. Stand up here and fish. Oh, okay. So I stand up there and fish. I don't know if it's 3 minutes in. All of a sudden, I'm in the water. I have no idea. I have no idea how I fell off his boat. But I fell off his boat in calm seas. Tom just looks down, as only Tom can, just laughs. Doesn't offer me any encouragement or anything. To this day, Tom won't admit it, but I think he knew I'd fall, and I think he made the boat rock like that, because that's just Tom. But I fell off the boat, and the seas are calm, and the seas, and you think of those things, and the first thing I think when I hit the water is, 5 minutes ago, Tom caught a shark. And I'm in here where Tom caught a shark, and how fast can I get out of here? And then I was thinking, well, that's Tom's rod, and I had to hold Tom's rod up because I don't want to lose it. I don't know how much this thing costs, and I don't want to pay for it. So I hold Tom's rod up, and I hand it to Tom. And then I hurry, swim to the back of the boat, and I get on. But there's a fear. There's a fear of water. There's a fear of what's underneath me. There was a fear of just an unknown being. And as they think in the sea, as they're going, you can just think of the relaxation that these guys had. As the disciples are going across, we've just heard Jesus teach. We've just heard everything. We're following the guy who has the answers. We've left our families, we've left everything behind so we can be with this guy. And as we get in the boat and we're going across to where the seas get rough, their question that always got me was, do you care? Do you care? Can you imagine asking Jesus Christ, who left heaven and came down, is going to die, do you care? And what's his answer? His answer was, get out of my face. Are you kidding me? I was sleeping peacefully. Don't bother me. I'll deal with this in a minute. I think of the ways I would have answered someone that came to me like that. Panicked and not trusting, and they've seen me. And Jesus' answer simple is, peace be still. And he calms the waves. First thing he does is took care of their needs. He saw they were in distress, and he took care of a physical need. He took care of exactly what they needed at that moment. He didn't rebuke them. First, he didn't say, hey, guys, let's have a lesson about this. I want to explain to you why I'm Jesus Christ, why you've got to trust me. His lesson to them was, let's calm the seas. Let's ease your nerves. Let's take care of what's stressing you at this moment. And when he stressed them, and when he took that stress away, he says, guys, what was the problem? Did you already forget who I was? And as we think of those things, and we think of, do we remember the power of Jesus Christ? Do we remember in those times that we're stressed, that things are happening in our lives, that Jesus Christ does care? And last week Ryan did the water to wine, and that's always an interesting miracle to me, because why would Jesus care? Why would Jesus care that they ran out of wine? Why would that be something that he would even bother himself with? Other than it was just a friend that ran out of wine and needed it. And he filled that need. Sometimes we think, that things we have a concern for, things that are bothering us, aren't big enough to take to Jesus. And his mom knew in that lesson. His mom knew Jesus will do it. Even when Jesus said, it's not my time, she just ignored it and said, just do what he says. Do what he's going to take care of it. And just like any mother would, he'll take care of this. And he did. And he made that. And in this moment, too, as you think, does Jesus care? Last night, I don't know if any of y'all, I know, Daryl, there's a few Gator fans here, and 30 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, and we're down 7 points. Did Jesus care that I really wanted that touchdown? I really wanted to tie up Tennessee. And really, I wanted to go for 2. But does Jesus care? And did he care more for Chris Lydon and Aaron Matthews that Tennessee ends up winning the game? Were their prayers better? Did Jesus care more? I don't know that Jesus cares one bit about it, but I think he listens. I think he thinks, well, that's important to Jeff. Let's listen to it. He's not going to always give me that thing, as we can tell, because we got a losing record, don't we, Daryl? Yeah. So he hadn't listened to all my prayers, but as we think of these things and we go through the trials of life and we go through what's important to us, do we forget who's got power over everything? And the first thing that we learn in this is God's got power over nature. And that fits so well into what happened in these past couple of weeks. God has control over nature. Is he going to make everything work out the way I want it to? No, he's not. But he wants me to come to him. He wants me to have a sense of ease, a sense of comfort in knowing he's got control. I asked Jenny this question, I asked my girls, and sometimes, these are the things that come to my head and I don't know, so someone can enlighten me and someone can correct me in this, because like I said, I come wrong with things. But in miracles, in a Church of Christ setting, do we believe in miracles? And I don't know. I don't know the answer. I feel like if I looked back in my history of being taught, I would say no. And I don't know if I've listened wrong, because I listen wrong a lot. So if I'm wrong, that's fine. But I would say, but I always wondered, do we believe that miracles still happen today? I know spiritual gifts, those are gone. We're not laying on hands, we're not talking in tongues, we're not, all of those are long past. But I'm talking about the miracles that he tells us to pray for. And when we think of what just happened, do we believe God would have a hand in helping us? Sometimes we just want to think that it's going to go away and things are going to happen, but do we believe that God has a hand?
Jeff?
I'm sorry, I missed somebody. Someone just
Jeff?
spoke from the heavens.
A little background on the Sea of Galilee. I know I'm behind times now. On the east side of the Sea of Galilee is a high ridge that runs all the way up and down it and goes on up into Syria, called the Golan Heights. You've probably heard that in history. High ridge, no vegetation, right at the edge of the water. On the north side is another high ridge. It goes east and west. That's where Capernaum is. So actually half of that lake is surrounded by very high ridge. The other side is kind of flat. So if any wind starts blowing, if it comes from the west toward the east, sort of like going up a ramp, that wind will be caught and bent going up the ramp, then it'll start swirling. If it comes from the east, it goes down the ramp, down to the water. So there's a lot of changes in that temperature from that ridge, either way it goes. So it is subject to a lot of very quick reactions of temperature, and storms happens quite often there because of the way the thing is situated. In addition, I know of at least 4 of those people in that boat who were experienced fishermen, probably more of them. And they were afraid. To me, that is something. I mean, you'd expect someone who hadn't been in the boat very much, but these were experienced fishermen, and they were afraid. That's really, really my point.
Yes, ma'am, Miss Linda.
Well, we don't have the miraculous things like in these verses, but I was in Minneapolis this week, and when I got there, I realized that I had picked the wrong day for when I was supposed to come back. I was supposed to come back a day later, but my reservation to come back was a day earlier. And Will calls me. He's like the weatherman because he knows when I travel, I'm focused on what I'm doing. And he said, "Do you know about the hurricane?" I'm like, "Helene?" He went, "No, Milton." Oh, I missed a couple. The point of that is, and I shared this with the people that I was with, that God was looking out for me. When I made that reservation, I didn't know Hurricane Milton was coming, but God did. So because I picked the wrong day, I was able to get back and didn't end up stuck in the Chicago airport. And I gave publicly to the people I talked to, I gave God the credit for looking out for me in that instance.
Yeah. You think of all the times that God works in our lives that I think can go unnoticed. You know, how easy would it have been just to go unnoticed of the way God works in our lives, because we're busy, you know, and things happen. In the natural order of things happen. You know, people are healed from sicknesses, people, you know, weather shifts. Things happen in the natural order of life that make us sometimes think, well, maybe God didn't have a hand in that. You know, and as we look here, and George said how quick the storms come up, and that's experienced guys that are fearful, and the seas calm when he speaks. Yes, ma'am, Miss Larry Ann.
Is it? I guess just in answer to your question about do we believe in miracles, I feel like that I would hope everybody in here, we can pray and we can look back and see that God's had a direct hand in supporting us and saving us and helping us out of situations, whether they were just bad situations or situations we got ourselves in. But constant prayer, I do believe God can, just like what Linda said, maneuver things so that it works out to our good. But I don't think we can say that we believe in just a miracle, as in somebody being raised from the dead. I don't think there's anything that's going to happen today that you can't explain. I mean, we know that God was there, but it can't be something that that's just impossible without God. I mean, of course, everything's impossible without God, but you know what I mean? It has to be something with a logical explanation somehow. But I do believe that is God. God works in our lives like that.
Yeah. And I want, and this is where, and I'll be honest, this is, if I say I have a struggle, this is where I have a struggle, does it have to be logical? And I agree, because everything in my mind, it's got to be logical. You know, yes, I agree with you. But when I read, like I'll read the verse that talks about, if you have faith, you'll move a mountain. If you say, move this mountain and cast it in the sea, the mountain's going to go into the sea if you have faith. Something that is not logical, and it's not going to happen without God, without faith. And that's where kind of I hate to say wishy-washiness, but I may have wishy-washiness on that. And as the teacher, but I'll just tell you, y'all can talk about it yourselves. I'm hoping that doesn't cause anyone to stumble. But that's where I come into when God tells me, because I am 100%, I'm with Larry Ann, and that's what Jenny will say too, that there's got to be a logical, it's got to be logical. There's got to be something. But sometimes I worry that I take it out of God's hands, and then that falls on me. Did I take it out of God's hand because I want to explain it logically? And I think it makes it easier on me too when God says no, because I do have to accept that sometimes God doesn't give me the answer that I'm hoping for. Mr. Ken, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yes, God doesn't have to use miracles. I mean, miracles are breaking the natural laws and doing something supernatural. God has his providence, which is amazing and far-reaching. I've heard people say, I'm not so sure about God's providence, but why would we be praying if we don't believe in God's providence? We're asking God to act.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everyone believes in God's providence that prays. But God doesn't necessarily need miracles to do wonderful, amazing things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because if you look at the way even just the human body's set up, like you said, I mean, it's the way he built it doesn't need a miracle. It's the way things are. And it gives us comfort. I think there's got to be a comfort in knowing that I can go to God. I don't have to wait and rely on just the natural order. I think Miss Sharon, if anybody's got oh, I'm sorry, someone over here. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
When you look at biblical miracles, always they are outside of the realm of human nature. Also, you'll find that they're not explainable from a human standpoint. In the book of Acts chapter 3, you have Peter and John who are dealing with a man who is paralyzed. He was born this way, and he is a beggar. And in the context of Acts 3 and verse 7, where he's healed, and he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. Here we learn a biblical miracle is immediate. But then if you look on in the context, so leaping up, stood and walked and entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God. So immediate and complete. And then in verse 10, then they knew that it was he who sat begging alms at the beautiful gate of the temple. And so in the verse 10, there's witnesses. And that's all three of those are characteristic of what you find concerning biblical miracles. There's only one, and I believe it's in the context of the book of Mark, where Christ heals a blind man, but it's only a partial, and then it's a complete. And in that context, it's for the sake of the apostles to say, now you see in part, but there is a day where you will be able to understand fully. And so I believe Acts chapter 3 certainly is the best definition, if you would, from a biblical standpoint, to help us understand that those three, immediate, complete, and before witnesses, is what constitutes a biblical miracle. And I believe that God still has his hand involved in all of our affairs, but he does that not supernaturally, but through the laws of nature that he has established. And the gentleman over there spoke about providence, and that's the way that I would believe God works today.
Yeah. No, I will not disagree. I will not. I won't disagree with that one bit. And I know, Ms. Sharon?
I think he probably, and I don't know who he was. I don't recognize the voice, so. I think sometimes we make the mistake of defining certain words on our humanness. And two of those words are miracle and prayer. We look at prayer as a request. It's our request line to God. And yes, we are to go to Him with certain things. But to ask God to not be God by, turning the storm or healing someone, I think is going above and beyond what those words should mean to us. I guess I base some of that on the fact that we know that we're told in Scripture very plainly that God is not a respecter of persons. I pray for certain things, specific things, whether it be healing or protection or whatever it is, and it doesn't come. But somebody else next to me does, and it happens. Where am I going to find ground to stand on if I believe that because I ask, we're told, ask and you shall receive. You have to ask in the proper way. And I think that has to come from an understanding, first and foremost, of who God is. And so when we can do that, we know that our prayer and our belief system is based on not whether I get what I want, but the fact that I have someone, God, who I can go to, who regardless of the outcome can sustain me and make my heart have peace. And that's why I say sometimes we get caught up in those human definitions of what those two words are. And it's not giving up just because I didn't get what I want. It's God is God. And I can count on that every minute of every day, regardless of what happens to me or what happens to the person who has the same situation and theirs turns out okay.
No, I absolutely agree. And you think back to Jesus' prayer. I mean, Jesus' prayer was, let this cup pass. I don't want to have to suffer. I don't want, this is not at all what I want to do. And I think sometimes we forget. He didn't want to. Jesus didn't want to go through what he knew he was about to go through. And if God would have said, I'll send another way, I'll send another way, Jesus would have said, okay. That was his prayer. And God said, no. It's sometimes when we do pray for what we want, God doesn't answer it exactly the way. I can't imagine that the apostles all wanted to be treated the way they were treated. I would imagine, they counted as gain. What they lost, they counted as gain. They were going through things that they prayed would not happen. I can't imagine that the deaths that they endured and the things that they had to go through to follow Jesus Christ were things that they were praying for. I can't imagine. And to go with Ms. Sharon's point, I think you're right. I think, how do you weigh that? As to who gets the good answer. Who gets the good answer? And the good answer defined by ours, by us, meaning that, we all want what's good. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Going back to your original question or statement, to me, the providence of God is equally, if not more, spiritually fulfilling than his miracles that he did in the Bible. When you had the miracles in the Bible, here's a dead person and he's asked to raise him and he raises them. But today, working through providence, here's all these little details that he has to take into account and make work in such a way that it comes around to his will. To me, those details and that minutia is so faith affirming because he's got his eye on all that and he works it together for good.
No, that's a good point.
It just came to me when she was talking about the ask and you shall receive. He doesn't say what you're going to receive. It may not be exactly what you asked for, but it's what you need. So maybe, like, because when Paul asked for healing for the thorn in his side, what he got was the contentment to deal with it.
But I don't like that answer. I don't like. I don't like it. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, I agree. It's I don't want what I need. I want what I want.
But people think when they go, well, I didn't receive, so therefore he's not there. No, you received whatever it was you needed from what you asked for. So it might not be healing. It might be acceptance that you receive, or the strength of spirit to deal with it, because that's what you need. And I think we sometimes forget that.
Oh, well, we're selfish and at least me. I shouldn't say we. This is me. I'm selfish and greedy. I want what I want, and I don't want to have to struggle to get it. You know, I always think that's what people used to say. You walk inside. I don't walk inside a restaurant. I go through a drive-through because the drive-through will hand me my meal like this. I want to ask and I want it to appear. You know, I don't want to take time. You know, I want right now. And I think sometimes that's my way with when I ask God is I want your answer and I want a good answer and I want it right now. And if I don't get it, I question. You know, and as we talk about these things, you think the disciples, they just got in the boat. You know, they just heard his teachings. And here we are in an immediate thing. I always think back to Peter, you know, you're going to deny me. No, I'm not going to deny you. No way. How soon, you know, do you walk out and do exactly what you said you wouldn't because your faith was shaken? You know, and what it takes to shake your faith. And you think there's safety in the boat. You know, as they were going in the boat, I can't imagine at any point during that smooth sailing boat ride that they ever questioned God. You know, there was no point in this smooth sailing, hey, we've got Jesus in the boat with us, we're rowing across, things are going well. They never questioned. You know, there was never a fear of, does God care, until the storm hit. You know, and as we think of that time that God's rocked something in our life, you know, something has, big or small, changed in our life that we want help with, and you say, Jesus, do you care? Are you even seeing what's going on? And when you look back and you think, what did they have to do? You know, what was the simple thing they had to do, but they had to go to Jesus? You know, do you care? Did you see it? Well, yeah, I saw it. But I always wondered, did he wait until, well, you finally came to me? You know, you panicked, I'm sure, while he was sleeping. How much other stuff were they doing? Were they, you know, like you said, they were experienced fishermen. You know, they knew how to handle the seas. Were they trying to take care of everything themselves? And then when it got so bad, you finally say, Jesus, do you care? Would you please wake up and care about this? And what Jesus do? He calms the seas. But it takes that moment of, sometimes I think Jesus has got to shake me. He's got to say, Jeff, you're too comfortable in your boat. You know, your boat's got to rock a little bit. So you remember who's making things happen. You know, who's important to you. I took a new job. I know I change jobs and do things different all the time. So if you didn't know, but now I work for hospice, Haven Hospice. And I get to go around and talk to people, you know, who at the end of life. And the different things that they're going through. And you talk about sometimes people's worlds being rocked. And the different things. And, you know, at hospice, you don't come into hospice because you're healthy. Right, Miss Dickerman? No one's coming to hospice and going to put you on hospice when you're a healthy person. I just happened to go into Miss Dickerman's room wearing my hospice badge, and she got a little concerned things had gone wrong in her surgery. But you meet people when you ask them, and hospice is the moment they feel like it's giving up. You know, that there's no other. You know, there's no other alternative. And you'll see them at that moment become a little more reliant on God. You know, they've gone through medicine. They've gone through every treatment they could go through. You know, and sometimes it's just, you know, there's nothing else that can be done. And you meet people at this time, and they become a little more, you know, well, we're putting this in the hands of God. And it's refreshing to hear. You know, it's refreshing to hear. And you always want to ask, what about before? You know, how, and you know these people in this moment of time, you know, did it take now? And some people, I can tell you, it took now. You know, their families are distraught, everything they've done. You know, they've never talked to God before. But one of the big things in hospice, every hospice has to have a chaplain. And people that are not religious, have never been religious, have never spoken to God, at that moment we'll ask for a chaplain. You know, it's at that moment, yeah, okay, I'm ready. Because they've exhausted their own ways. You know, they've done everything they could, everything they thought they needed to do it, and we're doing it right. But at that moment, sometimes that's when God comes. You know, when the boat's rocking, the boat you thought you were in is no longer safe. And you think about these things with these people, that the boat no longer became safe. You know, and I laugh because in these stories, and I hate to say laugh because it is kind of, but Jesus is so relaxed. Jesus is not panicked. He just knows where he's at. He knows what he can do. You know, he knows if you just ask, you know, I'll take care of it. The water to wine, you know, you think about him. He's at a wedding with his mom and the disciples, and something needs to be done. Okay, you know, bring the pitchers over. I'll take care of it. You know, these guys are about to sink in a boat. He's sleeping. He's got his cushion. I can just see it. You know, can you just see this guy up in the front of a rocking boat? I was on a rocking boat, going to throw my guts up and thinking that Jenny may not be able to have a husband anymore because I'm going to throw overboard. I just got to get off this boat. If I jump in the sea, I'll be better. And Jesus is up there sleeping. You know, there's nothing bothering him. One of the ones, and I don't think we'll probably end up getting to, is when he walked on the water. You know, when he comes out and Peter walks on the water with him. You know, the more I read into this and the amazement I have with they go out into sea and they're rowing to go, and he says, hey, go, I'm going to go meet you. And it sounds like, you know, they're 3 to 4 miles offshore, and it gets rough. And what do they see but some guy walking on the water? Jesus walked 3 or 4 miles across a sea to go see these guys on a boat. You think Jesus just messed with people? And this is just a bad thing to think, because this is a total guy thing, not probably girls probably there. What's he thinking about? You ever think Jesus just messed with the guys? Like, showed up, I'm going to walk on water. These guys are scared. I'll walk on the water, and I'm going to show up, and it turns into a teaching moment. It turns into a moment that I can teach. But it sounds like something I would have done to the guys who were scared out in the middle of a boat, as I would have walked on the water. And I would have shown up and said, hey, look at me. Look what I can do. You guys can't do it. You guys are in there crying in your boat, and I'm out here walking on water. And Jesus walks on the water, and Peter says, I want to come to you. You know, that's so amazing. Exactly what someone would say. I want to come to you. This is cool. It's because it's cool. And then you see the waves, and you think, Peter says, nope, not so cool anymore. And he looks, and he wants to get back in the boat, and he sinks. You know, and you think of the things that Jesus did to teach his disciples lessons. And they were just so, like, I like to think of them, and I don't know if this is just me, I like to think of them as normal guys. You know, normal people that are out there learning lessons the way I would learn a lesson, where I was not paying attention until he showed up at a weird moment, a moment where I was completely flipped out, and I thought, wow, Jesus has the answer. You know, there's a calm in the storm. There's a calm in the storm, and it's Jesus Christ. You know, if Jesus can walk on water, and I believe Jesus is there for me, I can come out there. You know, Jesus walked out there to see me. You know, how often do we not realize that Jesus cares about me? You know, I sometimes get in the generalities that Jesus cares about the church. Jesus cares about his people. You know, and he does. And I'm thankful for that, because there's a lot better people sitting in here that he would care about. But sometimes I got to remember, he cares about me. You know, he does care about the little things that are going on in my life. You know, and he wants to show me. Like he wanted to show his disciples. And you read in, it's John 20. John 20, verse 30. And the reason for the miracles. Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. The reason he's doing these miracles is so that you'll believe. He wanted to show his disciples his power. And you think about it, he's there with them, teaching in person, but he still had to do miracles to show them his power. You know, and you think they were sitting in this boat, they had just been taught. But it's not until he calms the seas that they say, wow, this guy can calm the seas. This guy can do great things. And you wonder, you didn't see that before. But I question myself, you know, I can see through life. I can see through the providence of God, the way he's set things up, the way he's developed it, that he cares about me. You know, there's things in this life. He cares about Jeff. You know, he cares about each and every one of us. It's not just as a whole. He cares about his church, and that's his number one goal. But he does care about you individually, what you're going through, what your struggles are. And when I say miracles, you can never be scared to ask God. You know, you can never be scared to wake up Jesus and say, please help me. You know, I'm a little scared. Please help me with this. And Jesus' answer is never, like, I don't know if you've ever asked your parents, or, you know, this is more of a teen question. Y'all are all adults. You're not asking your parents anymore. But they rebuke, you know, you should have known this. You know, why didn't you know this already? Why did you do this? You know, Jesus' answer, that would have been a quick, easy thing. Is why? What's going on, guys? What's the problem? But it never was. It's a loving response. You know, and sometimes we think there's got to be a bad response sometimes. But Jesus gives a loving, caring response. And he just calms the sea, and he says, this is why I did it. Guys, you got to believe in me. You got to remember what it is. And as I read this lesson through, and I prepared for this one, that was my take, is that I've got to remember that God cares about me. You know, that there's nothing too small that God's not going to care if I take it to him. He's going to care more, and he's going to let me suffer if I don't. You know, because I do wonder if they wouldn't have woken Jesus up, what would have happened? You know, if they wouldn't have woken Jesus up, would he have let the boat sink? I don't know. I'd like to think he wouldn't, but I don't know. You know, but they had to go to him. They had to do the first thing, and that is go to Jesus and ask for help. And that's not in my nature. It's not in my nature to ask for help. I don't like it. You know, I don't think most guys do. We talk about guys that won't get directions. We don't have that problem anymore because our phones give us directions, which is the greatest thing ever. But we're still not going to ask for help, you know, and that's something that we've got to get out of our heads. You know, whether, you know, we want it done, how we want it done, what we think the answer will be. But it's taking everything to God, everything through Jesus Christ that we need in our lives. What we see as a problem, what we may not see as a problem, but that we can take to Jesus Christ. And that's the lesson kind of I get out of this, Jesus calming the storm, is that we're going to have storms. We're going to have things that shake us and rattle us to our core. Jesus Christ is the answer. You know, that's where we've got to go, no matter what we think, through the natural realm of things that can happen. But, all right, thank you all very much.